but you got your lists, right? The list could have tens of them or maybe hundreds of things to do. How do you go ahead and use this checklist? So these are the three main groups that I believe, are the most effective. One is simply follow what ISO 27001 says, that you have an action register. And in the context of security, a register typically means any kind of a system where you can track things, right? So the most common term being a tracker, right? And action register, you can split up your action register for your compliance related activities and vulnerability related activities into two subparts. The reason why I suggest that is because the data points that you need to track for your compliance versus the data points that you need to track for your vulnerability management are different from each other. But at a fundamental level, they are both the same things. Like, you are ultimately tracking your security related activities to closure, right? That is one way you can do it, and it can be done very easily in a spreadsheet as well. Spreadsheet works because it allows you full flexibility in how you want to track it. In our collaborative world, where let's say you're using Google Workspace or Office 365, it is even better because then you can collaborate with multiple people. You can share it with across the organization with certain amount of restrictions, and it becomes very, very dynamic and very, very fluid and very, very easy. At the same time, you can also extract information out of it, like how are your metrics performing, the dashboard you can create, the reports you can create, what are the stats looking like, which can become an input to your management review meetings, where your senior management is updated on a regular basis that, okay, we were here maybe, let's say, 3 months back. Today we are here, and this is what is where we are projecting will be 3 months down the line. So your action register is something that is the predominant way that you should be tracking things. Other than that, if you can step up the kind of tools and platforms that you can use for the tracking of your checklist, then in that case you can go ahead and start using project tools. It could be like a ticketing system, for example, or you could use event planners. Now, ticketing systems will be useful where uh, you have to specifically interact with multiple functions, and there is a back and forth that is expected, right? Now, the most common way that you could end up doing this is through simple emails. The benefit of a ticketing system over email is that email is something that does not have those additional tools available where you can actually track the effectiveness and efficiency of your infosec activities. So ticketing systems tend to have several benefits over emails, but then the offside is that they lose flexibility. They are very rigid. You have to take the time to configure them. If you are dependent on someone else to provide you technical support for this ticketing system, then that becomes a roadblock. You need to ensure that if you switch over from, let's say, emails to ticketing system, then you are also taking care of your business continuity and disaster recovery aspects as far as the ticketing system itself is concerned. Because if you do not do that, and let's say your system goes down, then you are left in a very seriously problematic situation where you will not be able to pick up from it as quickly, uh, unless, let's say, you have probably defined a backup plan, which could be falling back to your email. So be careful when you go ahead and use a ticketing system, but I strongly recommend it as well. When it comes to event planners, infosec, specifically compliance, and more specifically your certification related activities, they uh, have got these expectations where you need to implement things and ensure that they are repeated on a fixed cycle. Now, this cycle could be annual, it could be half yearly, it could be quarterly, it could be monthly, it could, some of them are even daily. Like, you've got to take care of something daily. So if you use an event planner where you plan things out way into the future, the whole idea of having to depend on memory is eliminated, right? If you can have a system that automatically notifies you that, okay, this is what you're supposed to do, then it takes off a lot of operational tracking workload. And the biggest benefit of event planners is not the infosec team itself per se, but then the people from other departments, they will get automatically notified. Now, what is the benefit in this is that, unlike infosec, whose core job is information security related activities, all the other functions that you'll be working with, they've got their own priorities. So if you talk of technology or your HR or your finance function or your legal function, they've got their own priorities, which is not infosec, right? effectively, if you expect them to follow your calendar, they're not likely to be able to do that on their own. You will have to have a mechanism that you reach out to them on the as per the frequency that you want the compliance to be maintained. Now there are clearly two ways of doing it. You keep track of it, and then you ensure that you reach out manually, like maybe through an email, maybe through a phone call, or an instant message. If you can replace that with some kind of an automation, which is what is an event planner, it will reduce a lot of your operational workload, right? So ticketing system and event planners are kind of your next level of your action register, right? Your action register is basically tracking things. Your ticketing system and your event planners can be connected to your action register and automatically take up certain things that do not need to be done. Another way of managing your checklist and the volume of it and the volume of effort is you can either take a risk-based or a department-based prioritization approach. What it means is this. See, when we spoke about the 116 clauses and 114 controls for ISO 27001. If you go through those, you will end up realizing that there are a lot of things that need to be done by various departments. There are a vast majority of them belong to InfoSec, no doubt. Then the second most frequent controls that need to be implemented usually belong to the technology department. Now, um, when you look at those lists and you specifically convert those clauses and those statements into something that can be easily understood and implemented by people, your controls basically, you'll end up realizing that not all of them are equally important, right? Um, what you can do is that you can list them down in order of priority, starting from the most critical things to do, which have got a very high impact on your security posture, or implementation of those controls could improve your security a lot, right? So either way, either you are plugging a big hole by implementing that security, that whatever is the requirement, or if you implement it, your security posture will improve significantly. So naturally, you should prioritize those which have got this high impact on your security posture, right? Effectively, you can actually go down that list for each department, each function, and identify that some of them are not so critical to you, right? So that what I would call is a risk-based approach. The department-based approach, on the other hand, is the logic here is that, let's say you are a cloud-based SaaS organization, which means you've got a web application. Maybe you may be having a mobile application to support your web application, right? And that is your primary business. So naturally, when it comes to improving your security, you've got to focus on the aspects in your organization that have got the most risk applicable to them, the most possibility of a security breach happening. Now, where logically speaking, in a cloud-based SaaS organization, it will be your tech function. Even within your tech function, in fact, your DevOps function is the one that will be that should be your priority focus, because if your DevOps function configures your VPC environment correctly, ensures that your servers are sufficiently hardened, then there will be a significant improvement in your security. On the other hand, let's say if your engineering team writes the code in a secure manner, then automatically the possibility of any kind of a breach through your web application will reduce, right? Now compare this high amount of output of the things that you implement in your technology function versus uh, let's say you implement something in your physical administration department, meaning let's say you implement your biometric control, your physical security, like the access control that is there for physical security. If you are a cloud-based SaaS organization, all of your data is residing in a VPC environment belonging to a hosting provider, probably AWS or GCP or Azure. All of the physical security controls that really need to be implemented on high priority actually apply to your VPC provider. And AWS or GCP or Azure, they're all ISO certified. They're all PCI compliant. They all have got SOC 2 report. They already have implemented adequate level of physical security. You do not need to do that in your office environment. What you really need to focus on is more on the endpoint, the computers that people are using. So maybe step up your antivirus, step up your anti-malware related systems. But because someone can walk into your office, it's not really that much of a risk. The reason being, a majority of the of your data is actually residing in your VPC environment, right? So again, going back to the point that, how do you prioritize in terms of department? I'll rather, just go ahead and give my opinion on it, which is, when it comes to implementing security, I personally always say that at the top of your list should be your infosec and technology. Infosec, because of the fact that infosec is the one that actually implements and ensures that you remain compliant. Simultaneously, technology, which is where all of the controls are actually implemented. These should be top of your focus area list. Second should be your HR, where all of the people related trainings, all of the people related legal compliances, getting your confidentiality agreement signed, all of those aspects, your ISMS acceptance, all of your, disciplinary violation, in case of violation does happen, all of these are taken care of by your HR function. So moving on from technology, you should then focus on your HR. Now, if you go down the list, personally, my experience has been that your sales and marketing function typically should be at the bottom of your focus list. The reason being, they usually do not deal with any kind of personally identifiable information. They usually have got collaterals and materials that are anyways supposed to be sent out, published on the internet. They usually are the ones who are way too early in the client life cycle within your organization, that they really have very little exposure to confidential information. And whatever confidential information that the sales team typically has got access to is something that belongs to your organization, not to your clients, right? So you need to prioritize in this manner. And if you prioritize, what ends up happening is that out of, let's say, 200 things that you have got to do, you will be able to decide that, okay, 100 of these are important to do right now, and they belong to XYZ departments. And the 100 of them may be done later on, may be done, maybe not done at all, right? So this is the way in which you can use your checklist. The one is your action register, which I recommend you split up between compliance and vulnerabilities. The project tools, if you can afford to have a reliable system there, then in that case, I strongly recommend that you have some kind of a ticketing system and use event planners for your long-term tracking. And then your prioritization, which can be based on risk or your departments.